I love that old hymn. And, you know, I think it does speak a lot to the human condition, that in most tempest roars. And it speaks a lot to what I want to talk about today, suffering. Here we go for real. As I was saying, you know, I feel that there's a hunger in people to learn new ways of dealing with suffering. And I was giving a bit of a review about the last time when I talked about Shakespeare. I read part of his soliloquy, and how what it's about is Hamlet's debating how he wants to escape from his suffering, and how he's trapped because he's terrified of death. He doesn't know what's going to happen. It's the fear of the unknown, and he's trapped between suffering and fear of the unknown. And it's a cycle of fear and pain that I think people still experience today in different ways. We also looked at the dichotomy between Buddhist and Christian ways to deal with suffering, how Buddhists seek a path to eliminate pain, and Christianity embraces and even glorifies it, and how there could be truth and application for different people's circumstances in these philosophies. And I maintain that there is a reason for this suffering, that suffering on both a macro and individual level drives human knowledge, understanding, and evolution. I even read a passage in the book, How Good Do We Have to Be?, that included a utopian vision of a world where Eve never bit the apple and where no one suffers, and how evocative that vision was, where it was clear that a world void of passion and empty of longing would be something like watching black and white TV. And it moved me that this realization that suffering and drama and lack actually color the world. Now, all that sounds good, but when it comes to our own lives and our own problems and our own suffering, who cares about philosophy? You can hear the collective crying out, I'm in pain, I need help. Can't anyone see me? There's so much pain and need in the world that it will keep us all busy for a long time to come. And I'm grateful that there are so many loving, caring people in the world doing their part to ease the suffering of others, because caring takes energy. I think caring is its own form of suffering in a way, one of those 5 that I talked about last time. So I'm going to delve a little bit more into those 5 different types of suffering. The other 4 were physical pain, emotional pain, the pain of being wronged or victimized, and the pain of awareness, which I define as something that occurs when an inner truth is revealed or when a deeply held belief is challenged. And because one of these is physical and all the rest are mental and emotional, you could say that there's only 2 types of pain, physical and mental. And if you listen to the research and how people are learning how to reduce their pain and even heal sometimes severe physical conditions through purely mental exercises, there's also an argument that there's only one kind of pain, the kind in our minds. Now, if something exists only in our mind, then don't we have the power to change that? Not that it's necessarily easy, but there are so many paths to healing nowadays. It used to be that seeing a shrink, and I can say that because I have 2 in my family, was the only option. But now we have sound healing, music therapy, art therapy, and even hippotherapy, which was a new term for me. I actually just read about this morning. It's not with hippopotamuses, but with horses, you know, riding therapy. It looks like some of you are familiar with that. So these are all lovely, beautiful options. I think whatever course is chosen, that what it does is it has the opportunity to open new doors and new ways of thinking that don't occur naturally in the human brain. We all tend to get stuck in our narratives. We have a singular way of looking at everything, when in reality, there are infinite ways of looking at our experiences and the world outside of our consciousness. What if what you think is true simply because you think it? What if your thoughts had consequences so great that they create your reality? Now, this is just a question, but what I assert is that there's not one way to look at things, that the experiences that we have help break us out of our the path that we've locked ourselves into, and that there's an infinite ways to look at things on a continuum, some with lower energy and some with higher energy. So I believe the power of our minds to heal ourselves physically, mentally. I believe in the power of our minds to heal ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. And today I'm going to break down what I think some of the root causes of these are and what are our options. And I'm going to ask everybody to think creatively, because I think the greatest obstacle to transformation is the limits of our individual and collective imaginations, which means that most people can only imagine dealing with their suffering like Hamlet, by avoiding, ending, or escaping from it. Even at the end of Hamlet's soliloquy, something happens that is a good example of this. I don't know how familiar everybody is with it. I wasn't necessarily, but at the end, who comes in? Ophelia, Hamlet's woman, and instantly, distraction, he's successfully avoided understanding a proper answer for another day. So you go back to baseline, whatever baseline is for us. So people just don't want to be in pain anymore. And I think that if people really had ideas that made sense to them, if they had a clear path out, that more would walk it. And to this end, it's important to think of how many other ways to deal with suffering we can come up with, other than those three, escaping, distracting, or avoiding. So I think that would be an interesting discussion. If we have time for it at the end, I would love to discuss it, but we'll see. So first, physical pain. This is the easiest to understand and also the most difficult for one for me to address, given what I've just said about being able to heal pain, physical maladies in the mind, because I did experience a significant amount of pain, chronic pain, and was lucky enough to have the resources, help, and determination to eventually heal from that. And I didn't heal myself with my mind. I suppose in a way you could argue that I, did whatever, but you know what I mean. And other people are not necessarily, don't necessarily have the resources, the health insurance, the help, etc. So the creativity of medicine in dealing with pain is usually limited to painkillers and steroids. I do believe these things are helpful. I don't, decry anything that people do to deal with physical pain. Those are things that I certainly did, because you have to do what you need to do in that moment. But then to be able to continue looking for other options, which is what I'm talking about here. There are lessons to be learned through it. One of the blessings of suffering physically and mentally is that when life is good, you kind of skate by on a low burn. Whatever your baseline is, you tend to just kind of accept that. But when that level of discomfort increases, then most people are more willing to devote the amount of effort searching for meaning and deepening their connection to God and looking for answers. And to me, that was the blessing of suffering. So, like I said before, I do believe it's possible to heal oneself from anything because people have done it. And if anybody has heard of Joe Dispenza and his work, I feel it's really compelling. I haven't learned how to do it. I'm hoping to get into one of his week-long events. But if you're interested in learning how to heal physically and emotionally, I encourage you to look up any of his books. The first one is Evolve Your Brain. The second one is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which is more of the how-to manual. So anyway, that's physical pain. Next, I'd like to talk about emotional pain. Guilt, shame, embarrassment, fear, anxiety, self-deprecation, insecurity. And I'll add perseveration because this is a way of like reliving painful memories over and over and over again. This was a big one for me. Sending those like same emotional chemical signatures through the body time after time. That causes a good deal of suffering, I can attest. Which of these emotions is not due to an inward experience, a memory, belief, or attitude, right? People tend to think that they can't help how they feel. And I'm here to say, yes, you can. It's a skill. And you might not know how yet, because wherever you go, there you are. I think more than any other trite saying, this one speaks truth to the way that people keep themselves on the merry-go-round. Always blaming or running, moving to a new town, finding a new spouse, absolutely anything but facing themselves. And I think partly it's because they don't have the tools or the know-how, like I said before, a clear path, because I think if they had it, they would walk it. It's also part of human nature to want the easy way. That's just how we are. Who wants to go to all this effort? Who's got the time and energy? We're too busy living and working and watching TV. I mean, let's be real. Outlander is pretty good. And everybody's got their show, right? And again, I'm not demonizing distraction. I think for me, where distraction becomes unhealthy is if, name your thing, food, you know, whatever, even work, even exercise, things that would seem to be healthy, you know, on the outside, can actually be simply used to fill the void. And that if that happens, that it's actually the void that needs the attention. But that's probably another talk. So we believe that this pain is coming from outside of us, that the source is other people and events. We believe in the programming that we received as children that, you know, gave us the idea that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy. And we tend to adopt these messages as our own. We kind of wear them like clothing and believe them at a subconscious level. So that is actually powerful, because what is a part of you is something that you can affect. Like I said before, it's an internal message that can be shifted. You know, these feelings of guilt and shame as being who we are takes perseverance to overcome. It takes attention. It takes looking inward, the self-forgiveness, the striving for other ways of thinking, facing discomfort, coming to the understanding that all these voices live in us, and that it's our responsibility to become aware of them, accept them as truth, be present tenderly with them, as the Buddhists would say. Can you hold that with compassion? And ultimately to challenge them, to challenge the belief, to become our own parent. And this process is too much for one talk, but suffice it to say that this is one way out of emotional and mental suffering. Then there's the pain of being wronged. So I noticed that all these ways of suffering have a different energy. This one is powerful because sometimes we can be innocent victims of another's selfishness. And I call it selfishness because that's what I believe to be the root of all evil. Happy, content people do not visit harm on others or have a need to take anything away from anyone else. There's no easy answer to healing from this, but there is wisdom in the words of religion when they call for forgiveness, and this is universal among all religions. That is not something that I say easily, nor do I mean to imply that it would be a casual event. I heard Bishop Desmond Tutu speak at the National Cathedral years ago. He spoke about forgiveness, and in a powerful voice, he said, "This is not some namby-pamby act." He said namby-pamby. He talked about a woman who had been tortured sexually, and he even gave details about what had happened to her. The depths of depravity in the world can be shattering, but also the redemption and healing can be equally so. This woman forgave her tormentors, And if a torture victim can forgive, by God, I have no excuse. I've seen the toll that unforgiveness takes on a life, and how bitterness and anger impacts not just them, but the people close by them, and how it snuffs out love and joy. How different things might have been if there were forgiveness. So to help facilitate this, I like this little exercise, a simple exercise. You might ask yourself, where or who have I not forgiven? Can I forgive them or myself? And whether the answer is yes or no, what made that person or myself act that way at that time? I think this introduces curiosity, and it helps foster understanding and the idea that everybody's really just doing their best at any given time. Can you reformulate what happened as an experience and depersonalize it? And here's another, belief that can be a process to come to, because all people are treating you how they are. Does that make sense? Other people always treat you how they are. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It's them, giving what they have to give, whatever, that is. So, it's hard to come to that when you feel you're being treated unfairly, but all of this is a process. And next is the pain of awareness, which stands alone in my mind. This is the kind of pain to seek. This is where I can believe in the Christian value of embracing suffering. When you face yourself, you will find pain. And that's when you have an opportunity to hold it with the Buddhist compassion of awareness, or any awareness. It's not enough to revisit a painful experience over and over. It needs to be viewed from a different, higher perspective. And I believe that this is the hidden pain spoken of in the Gnostic Gospels. The Gospel of Thomas, which purports to be a collection of quotes from Jesus himself, which says, and I quote, Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will become troubled. And when he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all." Now, I don't know what rule over the all means, but, I think this is about, that the hidden truth of the Bible is that it's about an inward journey to peace. World peace, like the daily word, which was so beautiful. And we all know that we reach peace by achieving it within ourselves. So we all have our process. All right, I have a little note for myself to do a time check. How are we? I'm good? Okay, all right, thanks. So what we find when we seek that inner truth, the sudden realization of some buried, invisible, self-limiting belief, when realized, when the light of awareness shines upon it, can bring such a surge of emotion and pain. But once it's revealed, its power dissipates like fog in the sun. You can think of like a secret. If there's a secret that's been held for years or even decades, once that secret is out, it's like this weight has been lifted. Once we reveal and allow ourselves to experience such pain, like an infection that's been popped, it hurts worse at first, but the pressure is released and the pain is lessened. And the more often that happens, the better and lighter and more joyful the being. And finally, we come back to the pain of caring. I believe this one is desirable too. People who numb themselves out can't feel, can't care about themselves or anything. It hurts to care, to have true compassion, to feel the horror and pain of another person's experience. All you have to do is watch the news, and sometimes I cry listening to the radio or TV. Compassion is the color in our world. It's never wasted. And the more we heal ourselves, the more we have to give everyone and everything else. I think people who care burn out sometimes because they're striving to fix things that are beyond their control. Their intentions are good, but what they need is to evolve themselves. And the higher they raise their own understanding, the more they have to offer, and the stronger they are, the less buffeted by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as Shakespeare says. I believe with all my heart that the universe wants the highest and best for each of us. But if that's true, then how can the universe allow such suffering? What people always say after tragedy, how could God let this happen? And while it's not possible to determine what God wants, if we operate from a presumption that we live in a benevolent energy field in a universe that loves us and wants the highest and best for us, then it follows that painful experiences are part of what we signed up for, that pre-birth. We may even choose the family and which body we're going to incarnate into, and specifically even choose the types of experiences we need in order to grow. And if that's true, then embracing what life hands us would make us willing partners with our own souls. Finally, I will read a quote from Khalil Gibran, who I affectionately call Gibby. He writes in The Prophet about pain, and I think that this in a nutshell is kind of speaks to what my whole talk was about. And he said, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silencing tranquility, for his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, has been fashioned of the clay, which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears." God bless. Thank you. Thank you.